It was December 28th, 1963, that I married my college sweetheart, the love of my life, John Mackey, who had just played his first season with the Baltimore Colts. He was the second draft choice, and he was fortunate enough to start that year as their rookie tight end and became the Rookie of the Year that year also for the entire league. Now, we weren't married, though, until after the season because he wanted to concentrate all of his efforts on being the best football player he could possibly be. Then he wanted to concentrate on the life that we would plan together. Now, fast forward 38 years. December of 2001 was when my husband was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia. Now, throughout his whole football career, which lasted, fortunately, 10 years, and as a future Hall of Famer, he also was a great leader in the community. He and Lenny Moore were instrumental in providing food and provisions after the 1968 riots that took place in downtown Baltimore. John was also the first president of the National Football League Players Association. He was a fighter for increased and much-deserved benefits for all players. He wasn't a greedy person. He wasn't interested in settling personal lawsuits for himself. All he wanted to be was someone who just wanted to see the right thing done for every single retired player. Now, it's difficult to say exactly when John's strange behavior started to manifest itself because I can look back at every decade in my husband's life after football, and I can find one incident that I realized later I could look back on, and that incident stood out in my mind. And every time this strange behavior came up, it was accompanied by this really eerie, blank stare that was as though his eyes were just glued into looking into space. It just, to me, it was haunting, and I'll never forget it. Now, by the time he reached his mid-50s, the strange incidents had become more frequent and more bizarre. He'd become apathetic about life, about things that are important, about saving for retirement, about paying taxes, and the need for having health insurance. And he was also beginning to become very apathetic about his own personal hygiene and his own appearance, and that was shocking. And from a person who would take sometimes 2 showers a day to going 2 or 3 days without a shower. These were all the symptoms I read later of frontal temporal dementia, unique especially to Pick's disease, another subdivision of frontal temporal dementia. But when these things were happening, I really was going through all kinds of denial that something could be medically wrong with John. But I knew something had to be done because things were getting worse and the strange behavior was escalating. Now, the mentality of being an NFL player is really tough when you're trying to find something wrong with somebody who's considered a football great. I took him to one doctor who actually chastised me for bringing in the great John Mackey, that nothing could possibly be wrong with John Mackey. Well, John Mackey, of course, said the only thing wrong with him was me. Okay, I can deal with it because I knew the truth. Then I found another doctor, a psychiatrist, who said that he had organic brain syndrome. I never knew I don't know to this day what that is. Maybe one of the doctors here can tell us what that is. Then I found a neurologist who said that John needed a brain MRI or a PET scan. The results of the scan showed that he did have frontal temporal dementia with severe shrinkage of the left temporal lobe. Now, this is the part of the brain that controls judgment, such as knowing your audience. He might come up here with frontal temporal dementia and make a very inappropriate joke. Embarrassingly, we would all laugh and we go, oh God, why did he say that? And it was always at the wrong time and just in front of the wrong people. Inappropriate behavior, that was just one example. Now, believe it or not, the diagnosis was a relief. Instantly, all of the frustration and anger that I had built up really over the years, all of these frustrations just drained out of me like sand through a sieve, because now I knew I had to make a major life change. I had to find a new beginning. So I did lots of research on the internet about frontotemporal dementia in order just to know what to expect and to be prepared. I had to look ahead because now life was not going to go the way we planned. We needed a new game plan. Just recently, I heard Christiane Amanpour of CNN say how important information is. Information is everything. She says it's knowledge, power, and security. I could not agree with her more, because the knowledge that I gained gave me the power to achieve the security for my family that we needed in order to save what we had worked for so hard all our lives. I learned that through these diseases, we could lose everything because of an illness. There are no Alzheimer's survivors. There are no dementia survivors walking the face of the earth. Now, I have to go off on a little tangent here because this is really another subject, but I have to say that I feel that it is absolutely criminal that in the United States of America that an illness can totally financially destroy a family. And on top of all of this, there's only talk of increasing insurance coverage and never about reducing medical costs. Now, I recently read in USA Today, and I have to quote this exactly, "The explosion in healthcare costs in this country is the single greatest threat to our nation's physical health." Now, does that make sense to anybody? Does that make sense? One can lose every single thing they have worked for all of their lives because they need medical treatment for illness. Don't get me started. That's another ballgame. Now, on another front, the illness of patients with cognitive diseases becomes harder on the caregiver than on the patient in the long run. The caregiver is now the activity planner, the nurse, the dietitian, the chauffeur. So above all of this, you have to do things to keep yourself physically and mentally fit. At the time of John's diagnosis, we were living in California, so the biggest immediate change I had to make was to move him back to Baltimore, where he could still enjoy life for years, because he was still sought after for autograph shows and appearances. And these existed all up and down the East Coast. He was still able to participate, another 4 or 5 years. He actually thought sometimes that he worked for the Baltimore Colts. I would tease him sometime. I'd say, "Honey, Steve Bisciotti just called, said he needed a tight end this weekend." But he'd always remember, he'd say, "Yeah, but I haven't practiced." I said, "Well," and then he'd turn around and look at me again and he'd say, "Well, I'll do it if they pay me $1 million. So he had become aware of how much money the ball players are making now. He was also happy that fans still recognized him showing off his Super Bowl and Hall of Fame ring. One of the most important things in caregiving is to keep the patient really as active as he possibly can be and for as long as he can be. So every year I took John to the Super Bowl. He loved that, being around the fans and the other ball players, and he just felt to be such a part of everything, and he was, because everyone was so glad to see him. Then our family would also take him back to the Hall of Fame festivities every year. In August. And it was here that I noticed several players whose wives were asking me about their husband's strange behaviors. Some of the players had already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. Others were just being weird, and because I had come out and not tried to hide this, as so many people do, they were asking me, "Well, what did you notice about John?" And I could tell in their eyes they were fishing for information about what was going on with them. Then I realized that there are enough stricken players here that the league must do something. My plea was, I don't care if it was caused by football or not, you've got an elite group of legends here, and every former NFL player, whether they're a Hall of Famer or not, they're all a part of the great legacy. And they all deserve the benefit of what the game did to them or what's happening to them now. Whatever it is, this is what they have. Do something about it. So I wrote a letter to Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, and I told him the story exactly the way I saw it. I didn't have to exaggerate. I didn't have to embellish anything that I was saying. It was there, and it was ugly, and it was horrible, and they needed to know. because these diseases are 100% incurable and 100% fatal. And they deplete a family not only financially but also emotionally. I said to the NFL, how could the NFL let so many of its own foundation players lose their dignity with such devastation? That was the result of, my efforts resulted in the 88 plan, which is, of course, named after my husband's jerseys, all the way through his football career and professional career, college and professional career. So it is really so gratifying for me to hear what they call at the benefits office, the love letters that come in, that how it has changed a family's perspective and the ripple effect all the way down to now, in several instances, grandchildren being able to go to college because they don't have to stay home to take care of grandpa. So that is so gratifying for me, and even though it's not enough, and it has increased, by the way, too, Joshua, from the 88,000 to now the cap is 130,000 for facility care and 100,000 for home care. But that took an effort too, to talk to Roger Goodell and let him know that these costs are rising drastically. So I guess what I'm really trying to impress upon you is that in my efforts to constantly find something good in everything, and that's my motto, there's something good to be found in everything, I called John Mackey the new face of concussion because he is the new beginning of help for so many others, this is what he would want it to be if he knew everything would ever happen to him like this. So it's my intention to carry on his mission until hopefully one day we will no longer need it because there will be a cure or total prevention from all neurological diseases. Yes, on July 6th of 2011, I did lose the love of my life, but I will never lose the life in my love for him and his legacy. Thank you so much.